The massive viewing screen cast a pale blue light across Admiral James Walker's face as he watched the destruction unfold. His hands gripped the command chair's armrests so tight his knuckles turned white. The Shadow of Dawn, Earth's most advanced stealth vessel, hung motionless in the darkness of space, its systems running in passive mode to avoid detection. The alien world below them, once a beautiful green and blue pearl much like Earth, now bore angry red wounds where the Empire's world killer ships had struck. James had seen many terrible things in his 20 years of space service, but nothing like this. The Empire's massive ships, each one longer than Earth's largest city, moved with terrifying precision as they systematically destroyed an entire civilization. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant David Ross from the sensor station, his voice barely audible in the silent bridge. "I'm recording everything. Their energy signatures, attack patterns, everything." The young officer's face looked pale and sick, but his hands moved steadily over the controls, gathering data that might save Earth from the same fate. James nodded but didn't speak. They had strict orders: observe only, maintain absolute silence, and learn everything they could about the enemy that was moving steadily through the galaxy, destroying world after world. The Shadow of Dawn's stealth technology, primitive compared to the Empire's capabilities, worked precisely because it was different. While the Empire looked for quantum distortions and subspace ripples, the Shadow of Dawn simply absorbed all energy that hit it, like a hole in space. Through the view screen, James watched as another Imperial weapon fired. The beam wasn't just light or plasma. It seemed to tear apart the very fabric of reality. The planet's surface cracked open like an egg, but instead of magma, strange energies poured out. The Empire's ships collected these energies with great care, even as they continued their destruction. But then James noticed something odd. Right before each world killer ship fired, there was a subtle flicker in their shields, a moment of vulnerability. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Ross, focus our sensors on their shield harmonics during weapon discharge," he ordered, keeping his voice low despite knowing the Empire couldn't possibly hear them through the vacuum of space. The next few minutes felt like hours as they documented every detail. The Empire's ships moved in a complex pattern, almost like a dance, but James could see the logic behind it. They weren't just being thorough, they were being efficient, minimizing their energy expenditure while maximizing destruction. "Admiral," called out Officer Emma Thompson from her communication station, "I'm picking up transmissions from the surface. Some survivors are still." Her voice caught in her throat as another beam struck, silencing the signals she'd been monitoring. James clenched his jaw. The hardest part of their mission was not interfering. Every instinct screamed at him to help, to do something, but he knew Earth's fate might depend on staying hidden and gathering this intelligence. The Empire had already destroyed 17 known civilizations, each far more advanced than humanity. Earth's only hope lay in finding a weakness, something all those advanced races had missed. Hours passed as they watched the methodical destruction continue. The Empire's ships moved with machine-like precision, but that same precision revealed patterns. James had spent enough time in battle to recognize that even the most powerful enemy could be predictable, and predictability meant vulnerability. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Empire's ships finished their grim work. The once thriving world below was now a broken shell, its core energy harvested, its surface fractured beyond recovery. The massive ships formed up in an arrow formation, and, in a flash of impossible light, vanished into whatever dimension they used for faster-than-light travel. James waited another full hour before speaking at normal volume. "Set course for Earth. Maximum stealth protocols maintained until we clear this sector." He stood up, his legs stiff from sitting motionless for so long. "Ross, Thompson, I want a full analysis of everything we recorded. Focus on their firing patterns and shield fluctuations. Even gods have weaknesses, and these bastards aren't gods." As the Shadow of Dawn turned away from the graveyard of another civilization, James made a silent promise to the ghosts they left behind. Humanity would learn from their sacrifice, and when the Empire finally came for Earth, they would find that humanity had learned their lessons well. Deep within the protective walls of Luna Base, Dr. Mary Thompson rubbed her tired eyes. The soft blue glow of multiple screens lit up her small office, each displaying data from another dead civilization. The underground facility hummed with the constant sound of life support systems, a reminder of how fragile human existence was on the moon. The latest data package from the Shadow of Dawn had arrived 3 hours ago, and she hadn't moved from her desk since. Coffee cups littered her workspace, testament to her determination to find something, anything, that might help Earth survive what was coming. The images from the destroyed world haunted her, but they also revealed patterns she hadn't seen before. Computer, overlay the energy readings from civilizations 7, 12, and this new one, she commanded. The screens flickered, and 3 different data sets merged into one coherent image. Mary leaned forward, her exhaustion forgotten. There it is again, she whispered to herself. Every destroyed planet showed the same strange energy signature right before its core was harvested. A knock on her door broke her concentration. "Come in," she called out, not taking her eyes off the screen. Dr. John Baker, her colleague in Xenorchaeology, stepped inside. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, matching the urgency in his voice. "Mary, you need to see this." He handed her a tablet. "Our deep space sensors just picked up something at the edge of the solar system. The energy signature matches what we've seen before." Her hand shook slightly as she looked at the readings. An Imperial scout ship, just like the ones that had preceded the destruction of every other civilization they'd studied. "How long?" she asked. "Best estimate, 2 weeks before it reaches scanning range of Earth." John pulled up a chair beside her. "What have you found?" Mary turned back to her main screen. "Look at this. Every world the Empire destroys, they don't just break it apart. They extract something specific from the core. The energy signatures are identical across all cases." She pulled up another set of data. "And here's the interesting part. The older the civilization, the more energy they extract." John frowned. "Are they feeding on something? Some kind of energy we don't understand?" "Not exactly." Mary stood up and paced the small office. "I think they're taking something fundamental, something that builds up over time as civilizations develop. But here's what's strange. Earth's core energy readings don't match the pattern we see in these other worlds." She quickly typed commands into the computer, bringing up Earth's core readings alongside those from the destroyed worlds. "See, all these advanced civilizations show high levels of what the Empire seems to want. But Earth," she pointed to the contrasting data, "we're different. Our core energy is more chaotic, less concentrated." "Is that good or bad?" John asked, studying the readings. "I don't know yet, but I think it's important." Mary pulled up the footage from the Shadow of Dawn. "Look at how their weapons interact with the planet's magnetic field before they strike. There's something about the relationship between their technology and planetary magnetic fields that we're missing." A red light started flashing on one of her screens, a priority message from the Defense Council. Mary opened it, her face growing pale as she read. "They're calling an emergency meeting. The scout ship's trajectory change. It's moving faster than we predicted." John stood up quickly. "How much time?" 5 days, maybe less." Mary began gathering her data tablets. "We need to show them what we found. The Empire's not just destroying worlds. They're harvesting something essential from them. Something they need." As they hurried through the lunar base's corridors toward the emergency council chamber, Mary's mind raced. The Empire's pattern was clear: scout, study, destroy. But Earth was different. Their core energy didn't match the pattern, and their magnetic field was unique among the worlds they'd studied. "John," she said as they reached the council chamber doors, "what if our greatest weakness is actually our strength? What if being less advanced means we're less vulnerable to whatever they're doing?" The doors slid open to reveal a room full of grim-faced military and scientific leaders. On the main screen, a blinking dot showed the scout ship's approach. Time was running out, but Mary clutched her data tablets tightly. They might be behind in technology, but humans had something the Empire hadn't counted on: the ability to learn from others' mistakes. Professor Robert Clark stood in the middle of the underground testing chamber, surrounded by fragments of alien technology salvaged from dead worlds. The pieces lay scattered across multiple workbenches, each one a testament to civilizations far more advanced than humanity. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows across the room, power being rationed now that the Imperial scout ship had been detected. "Run the test again," he told his assistant Mark, who stood behind thick protective glass. They had been working nonstop since Dr. Thompson's discovery about Earth's unique magnetic field. The chamber hummed as they activated another piece of salvaged technology, this one from the ruins of the Centauri colonies. The alien device powered up, its strange symbols glowing with an inner light. But as soon as they exposed it to the chamber's magnetic field generator, calibrated to match Earth's natural frequency, the glow flickered and died, just like all the others. "That's the 17th test, Professor," Mark called out over the intercom. Same result. Earth's magnetic field pattern disrupts every piece of advanced technology we've recovered. Robert walked over to the failed device, his hand hovering over its now dark surface. "It's not just disrupting them," he said slowly. "It's preventing them from establishing quantum coherence. That's why our technology works differently." He turned to face the observation window. "Get me a secure line to the Defense Council. Now." Minutes later, Robert stood before a wall of screens, each showing the face of a council member. He had worked quickly to prepare his explanation, knowing time was precious. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've discovered why Earth might have a chance," he began, sharing his test results. "Every advanced civilization we've studied developed technology based on quantum manipulation. Their devices, their weapons, even their communications, all rely on maintaining precise quantum states across vast distances." He switched to showing Dr. Thompson's core energy readings. But Earth's development took a different path. Our stronger magnetic field made it harder to maintain quantum coherence, so we developed technologies that work despite this interference, not around it. What we thought was primitive technology might be our greatest defense. General Stone's voice crackled through the speakers. "Are you saying our primitive technology might work better against them?" "Exactly," Robert replied, excitement creeping into his voice despite his exhaustion. "Their shields, their weapons, they all depend on technology that our magnetic field naturally disrupts. That's why their scout ship is approaching so cautiously. They've never encountered a world quite like ours." He quickly switched to showing footage from the shadow of dawn. "Look at their attack pattern. Every time they fire their main weapons, they have to temporarily lower their quantum field protection. On other worlds, this didn't matter because no one had weapons that could work in that split second. But our nuclear weapons, our railguns, our primitive projectile weapons, they don't need quantum coherence to work." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Robert waited patiently, knowing they needed time to process the implications. Admiral Walker's voice cut through the chaos. "How can we use this?" Robert pressed a button, bringing up his final simulation. "We modify our existing weapons to take advantage of this weakness. Their technology is so advanced that they've forgotten the basics of physical warfare. They're vulnerable to kinetic impacts during their firing sequence. And if we can disrupt their quantum fields at the right moment." He let the simulation play out, showing how a properly timed strike could cascade through their systems. "Their greatest strength is their greatest weakness. They're so dependent on their advanced technology that they have no backup systems, no redundancies based on basic physical principles." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's apparent weakness, their less advanced technology, might be the key to their survival. The Empire had evolved beyond physical weapons, beyond simple magnetic fields, beyond the basic forces of nature. and that evolution had left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of warfare that humanity had mastered. "How quickly can we implement these modifications?" General Stone asked. Robert looked at his data tablet, running quick calculations. "The basic principles are simple. We can start modifying our nuclear arsenal immediately." But he paused, making sure they understood the gravity of his next words. "We'll only get one chance at this. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll adapt. Everything depends on that first strike." The council members looked at each other through their screens. They all knew what was at stake. Humanity's final stand would depend not on matching the Empire's advanced technology, but on exploiting its fundamental weaknesses with humanity's most basic weapons. "Begin the modifications," General Stone ordered. "And Professor, good work. Maybe being primitive isn't such a bad thing after all." Robert nodded, already mentally preparing for the work ahead. Sometimes, he thought, the oldest solutions were the best ones. The Empire had forgotten the power of simple physics in their quest for advancement. That mistake might just save humanity. General William Stone stood at the head of the circular table in the emergency command bunker, 5 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room's air felt heavy with tension as he looked at the faces of Earth's last military leaders. On the massive screen behind him, a real-time map showed the Imperial scout ship's position, now only 3 days away from Earth's outer defense perimeter. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "what I'm about to propose will sound like madness. But right now, madness might be our only option." He nodded to his aide, who distributed tablets to everyone present. The room fell silent as they read the plan. Admiral Peters from the European Alliance was the first to look up, his face pale. "You want to use our entire nuclear arsenal in a single strike. The environmental damage alone would be nothing compared to what the Empire will do to us." Stone cut in. He brought up the footage from the Shadow of Dawn on the main screen. "We've all seen what happens to worlds that resist conventionally. At least this way, we choose how we burn." Dr. Thompson, who had been quietly observing from her seat, spoke up. "The magnetic disruption calculations support this strategy. If we detonate our weapons in the correct pattern, we can create a cascading failure in their quantum field network." She pulled up her own data, showing the simulation. "But the timing must be perfect. We get one chance." The Russian general, Petrov, leaned forward. "How many warheads?" "All of them," Stone replied firmly. "Every nuclear weapon on Earth, in space, and on the moon. We modify them according to Professor Clark's specifications, position them in a precise grid pattern, and detonate them in sequence." He paused, letting that sink in. "The electromagnetic pulse alone will fry most of our own technology, but our backup systems are hardened, primitive enough to survive." The Chinese Admiral, Li, shook his head. "You're asking us to risk everything on a single attack. If it fails, we die anyway," Stone interrupted. "But we die fighting, and we die on our terms." He walked around the table slowly, making eye contact with each leader. The Empire has never faced a civilization that would sacrifice everything to stop them. They've never encountered a species willing to burn their own world to save it. The Indian commander, Patel, studied the plans carefully. "The modifications to the warheads. These will take time we don't have." "We've already begun," Stone revealed, triggering surprised murmurs around the table. "Every weapons facility on Earth is working round the clock. Professor Clark's team has simplified the process. We'll be ready." The room erupted in overlapping conversations, arguments, and questions. Stone let them talk, knowing they needed to process the magnitude of what he was proposing. Finally, Admiral Walker, who had been silent until now, stood up. "I've seen what they do to worlds," he said quietly, but his voice carried across the room, silencing everyone. "I watched them tear apart a civilization far more advanced than ours. But they didn't expect that civilization to fight back. They never do. They're so convinced of their superiority that they've forgotten what desperate people are capable of. He walked to the main screen, pointing at the approaching scout ship. Right now, they think they're studying a primitive world, easy prey. They have no idea we've been studying them. They don't know we found their weakness, and they certainly don't expect us to use our own atmosphere as a weapon against them. Stone nodded gratefully to Walker before addressing the room again. The plan requires unanimous agreement. We'll need every nation's arsenal, perfect coordination, and absolute secrecy. The Empire cannot suspect what we're planning. One by one, the leaders began to nod. The Japanese admiral spoke for them all. Better to risk everything on a single bold strike than die slowly like all the others. Stone looked down at his own tablet, at the casualty estimates and environmental impact projections. The numbers were staggering, but still better than total extinction. Then we're agreed. Operation Solar Flash begins now. May whatever gods exist forgive us for what we're about to do. As the leaders filed out to begin preparations, Dr. Thompson approached Stone. General, there's something else you should know. The readings from the scout ship, they're different from what we've seen before. They're being more cautious than usual. Stone met her worried gaze. They suspect something. No, she replied. I think they're afraid. For the first time in their history, they've found a world they don't quite understand. And that fear might be our greatest weapon of all. Commander Tom Anderson watched the retrofitted mining ships move into position around his vessel, the Hammer of Dawn. Each ship had been stripped down and rebuilt in the past 72 hours, transformed from peaceful mining vessels into weapons of war. Their normal mining lasers had been replaced with makeshift missile tubes, each carrying a single modified nuclear warhead. All ships report ready, sir, his communications officer, Lisa Reed, announced. The crew worked with quiet efficiency, every person aware that they were likely on a one-way mission. The Imperial scout ship hung in space before them, its sleek design making their converted mining vessels look like children's toys in comparison. Tom took a deep breath. Send the message we prepared. Let's see if they're as arrogant as we think they are. He watched as Lisa transmitted the carefully crafted distress signal, designed to look like a civilian mining fleet in trouble. The Imperial ship took the bait. It changed course smoothly, approaching their position with the casual confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. As it drew closer, Tom could see the strange patterns of energy flowing across its hull, the quantum fields that made their technology so advanced. Remember, he said to his crew, we only get one shot at this. Professor Clark's modifications should work, but we have to hit them at exactly the right moment. He watched the distance markers counting down on his display. All ships maintain radio silence from here on. You know the plan. The mining ships drifted in what appeared to be random patterns, playing the part of damaged vessels. But each movement was carefully calculated, drawing the Imperial ship into the center of their formation. Tom's hands tightened on his command chair as the alien vessel came to a stop, probably preparing to destroy them with casual efficiency. They're powering up their main weapons, his sensor officer reported. Quantum field fluctuations detected, just like the professor said. Tom leaned forward. Wait for it. Wait. He watched the energy readings spike. The Imperial ship's shields were shifting, preparing to fire. Now, all ships, execute. The mining fleet burst into action. Each ship fired its single warhead simultaneously, the missiles streaking through space in perfect coordination. The Imperial ship's shields began to rise, but they were designed to stop energy weapons and quantum attacks, not primitive nuclear devices. The first warhead detonated against their shields, creating a localized disruption in their quantum field. The second and third followed milliseconds later, their explosions timed precisely to amplify the disruption. By the time the fourth warhead hit, there was a hole in their seemingly impenetrable defenses. The Imperial ship tried to react, but they had never encountered an attack like this. Their advanced sensors, tuned to detect quantum weapons and energy signatures, had dismissed the nuclear devices as too primitive to be a threat. That mistake proved fatal as the final warheads penetrated their hull. "All ships, full reverse," Tom ordered. The mining fleet pulled back as the Imperial vessel began to break apart, its own power systems turning against it as the cascade failure spread through its quantum network. The explosion that followed was unlike anything they had ever seen, a strange mixture of conventional energy and quantum disruption that seemed to twist the fabric of space itself. As the light faded, Tom looked at the debris field where the Imperial scout ship had been. "Report," he ordered, his voice hoarse. "Confirm destruction of the target," his sensor officer replied, disbelief evident in his voice. "Sir, it worked. It actually worked." But Tom knew better than to celebrate. "Send the encrypted burst transmission to Earth Command. They need to know the modifications work." He looked at the long-range sensors, already showing multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. "The Empire won't take this lightly. We just killed one of their invincible ships with technology they consider primitive." Lisa looked up from her console. "Sir, Command acknowledges receipt of data. They're ordering us to fall back to Earth." Tom nodded grimly. "Send one last message before we go. First test successful. The giant has feet of clay. Then get us out of here, best possible speed." He watched as his crew worked, pride mixing with fear in his chest. They had proven humanity's weapons could hurt the Empire, but they had also ensured the enemy would come with everything they had. As the mining fleet turned for home, Tom thought about the meaning of their victory. Earth had just shown the galaxy that even the most advanced technology could be defeated by simple physics and human determination. But they had also guaranteed that when the Empire came, they would come with a vengeance that would shake the stars themselves. Dr. Mary Thompson hadn't slept in 3 days. The lights in her Luna-based laboratory flickered as another tremor shook the facility. Above them, through miles of lunar rock, the Empire's advance fleet had begun their first attacks on the moon's surface. The constant impacts sent vibrations through the entire base. Her screen showed the approaching Imperial Armada. Hundreds of ships, far more than anyone had expected. Their successful destruction of the scout ship had provoked a massive response. But as she studied the data flowing across her screens, something clicked in her tired mind. "John," she called out to her colleague, "look at these readings from the fleet. Remember how their ships communicate." She pulled up multiple data streams, her hands shaking with excitement despite her exhaustion. Dr. Baker hurried over, clutching his coffee cup as another tremor rocked the base. "They use quantum entanglement for instant communication across their fleet. We already knew that." "Yes, but look at this." Mary highlighted a pattern in the data. "It's not just communication. Their entire technology is built on a network of quantum entangled particles. Every ship, every weapon, every shield. They're all connected. It's why they're so powerful, why they can coordinate so perfectly." The main screen suddenly lit up with a priority alert. The Empire's main fleet had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They would reach Earth in less than 6 hours. "We need to call General Stone," Mary said, already reaching for the communication console. Minutes later, she faced a screen filled with tired faces from Earth's military command. "Make this quick, Doctor," Stone ordered. "We're about to begin deployment of the nuclear defense grid." Mary took a deep breath. "Sir, I know why Earth's magnetic field disrupts their technology. Their entire empire runs on a quantum network, particles entangled across space itself. But quantum entanglement is fragile. It can be disrupted by strong magnetic fields. Earth's unique magnetic field naturally interferes with their network, which is why they're being so cautious." Admiral Walker's voice cut in from another screen. "How does this help us?" "We're about to launch everything we have at them. Because we can do more than just disrupt individual ships," Mary explained, sending her data to their screens. "Their quantum network is like a web. If we can create a strong enough magnetic pulse, we might be able to break not just local connections, but spread the disruption through their entire network. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Stone leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "Luna Base," Mary said quietly. "The moon's core still has significant magnetic properties. If we detonate our lunar nuclear stockpile in the right way, combined with the base's fusion reactors." She paused, looking around at her fellow scientists. "We could create a magnetic pulse strong enough to ripple through their entire quantum network." "You're talking about destroying the moon," Admiral Walker said flatly. "Parts of it," Mary corrected. "The explosion would fracture it, but the effect on Earth would be minimal compared to what the Empire will do to us. More importantly, the quantum disruption would spread through their entire fleet, maybe even reach their home systems through the entanglement network." Another tremor, stronger this time, shook the base. Warning lights began flashing as the Empire started their systematic bombardment of the lunar surface. General Stone's face showed the weight of the decision. "How sure are you about this?" "Sure enough to stay here and trigger it myself," Mary replied, her voice steady. She looked at her fellow scientists, seeing the same determination in their faces. "We can set up the reaction, but it needs to be monitored and adjusted until the last second. Someone has to stay." The general closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Do it. We'll coordinate the surface attack with your lunar detonation. God help us all." As the screens went dark, Mary turned to her team. The entire base shook continuously now as the Empire's weapons got closer to their position. "Well," she said, trying to smile, "let's go break the laws of physics one last time." They rushed to work, converting the base's reactors into an improvised magnetic pulse device. Above them, the Empire's ships moved into position for their final attack, unaware that their greatest strength, their quantum network, was about to become their downfall. The moon itself would be their last weapon in humanity's desperate gamble for survival. Admiral James Walker stood on the bridge of the Shadow of Dawn, watching Earth's combined fleet take their final positions. The massive Imperial Armada filled the view screen, their ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns that seemed to mock humanity's ragged defensive line. Behind him, General Stone's voice came through the command channel, coordinating with forces around the globe. "All nuclear platforms report ready," Stone announced. "Luna Base confirms magnetic pulse device is primed." There was a pause. "Dr. Thompson says they need 3 more minutes to achieve maximum potential." James watched the Empire's fleet begin their attack formation. They moved with the same deadly grace he had witnessed destroying that other world so long ago now. But this time, humanity was ready. This time, they knew what to expect. "Enemy fleet launching first wave," his tactical officer reported. The Imperial ships release thousands of smaller craft, their quantum drives leaving strange ripples in space. "They'll reach our outer defense line in 2 minutes. Hold positions," James ordered both his crew and the fleet. "Remember your training. Wait for the magnetic pulse before launching our warheads." He watched the enemy fighters approach, every instinct screaming to fire early. In the lunar bunker, Mary Thompson's fingers flew across her console, making final adjustments to the magnetic pulse device. The base shook constantly now as Imperial ships bombarded the surface above. Energy levels at 95%. She called out to her team. "John, redirect power from life support. We won't need it anyway." The Empire's first wave struck Earth's outer defenses. Conventional weapons flared against their shields, doing little damage but forcing them to maintain their quantum field barriers, just as planned. "Luna Base reports ready." Stone's voice crackled through the command channel. "All units prepare for electromagnetic blackout. Switch to hardened systems on my mark." James took a deep breath. "All ships release safety locks on nuclear weapons. Prepare to fire on designated coordinates." The Shadow of Dawn systems switched to their most basic configurations, everything they had learned about the Empire's weaknesses built into this one moment. Energy spike detected in the Imperial fleet, his sensor officer shouted. "They're charging their main weapons." Now, Stone commanded. Deep within Luna Base, Mary pressed the final sequence. For Earth, she whispered and activated the pulse. The moon itself seemed to shudder. A massive electromagnetic wave burst forth, visible to the naked eye as it rippled through space. The pulse hit the Imperial fleet just as they began to fire their main weapons, catching them at their most vulnerable moment. All units, execute final attack plan, James ordered. Earth's combined fleet launched their modified nuclear weapons, precisely timed to strike through the gaps created by the magnetic disruption. The effect was beyond anything they had imagined. The Imperial ship's quantum fields didn't just fail, they collapsed spectacularly, the disruption cascading from ship to ship through their own network. Their perfect formation broke apart as vessels lost power and control. "It's working," someone shouted on the command channel. "Their whole network is falling apart." The nuclear detonations began, carefully positioned to amplify the magnetic disruption. Space itself seemed to twist as the quantum network that held the Empire's technology together unraveled. Ships that had conquered countless worlds now drifted powerless, their advanced technology rendered useless by the very interconnectedness that had made them so powerful. Energy surge detected through their network. Mary's voice came through weakly from Luna Base. "The disruption. It's spreading beyond the local fleet. Their entire empire. Their whole network is." Her transmission cut off as the moon began to break apart, the force of the magnetic pulse tearing through its core. But the sacrifice had achieved its purpose. The Imperial fleet was in chaos, their ships either destroyed or drifting helplessly in space. Hours later, as rescue ships picked up survivors from the Imperial fleet, James stood in the shadow of Dawn's observation room, watching pieces of the moon drift past. Earth's magnetic field glowed with unusual patterns, altered by the massive discharge, but still protecting their world. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're picking up transmissions from other worlds. It seems the quantum network collapse affected the entire Empire. Their hold over their conquered worlds. It's gone." James thought about all those who had sacrificed themselves. The crews of the mining fleet, the scientists of Luna Base, the countless others who had given everything for this moment. Humanity had won not by matching the Empire's advancement, but by remembering the fundamental forces that their enemies have forgotten. "Send a message to all surviving Imperial ships," he ordered. "Tell them, this is humanity's final warning. Remember this day. Remember what happened when you pushed a primitive species too far. The stars are free now."